Today's host, Sam Peak.
Shalom Aleichem. Peace upon you. Welcome to our program. I hope you'll stick with us for a little while. We're going to continue what we've been doing for the past several weeks, and that's actually just having fun. That's what we're doing in this little short series of programs that are looking at the Gospel of Luke, and we're just kind of going through Luke and picking out a few things, and then you're also letting me skip a few things. But just to chase some rabbits, that's what, to me, having fun in teaching is it opens other doors along the way that we can pursue and we can find different things out and add not just to our knowledge, but to our experience of the Bible, because we should experience it in our lives and it should be very, very real to us. And part of my whole purpose in teaching, and basically once again, I need to state this again and again and again and again, that I'm basically a teacher of Judaism. And you need to know that so that you know where I stand and where I come from and what's in my faith and in my belief. But I'm a teacher of Judaism to Christians. Why? So that they can better experience the Word of God and better experience their faith and their walk with God. So that's basically what we're doing. So none of you please take offense at anything I may or may not say. That happens to me. Sometimes I get in trouble for the things that I don't say as much as I do for the things that I say, So anyway, stick with me. We'll have a good time just enjoying, studying this wonderful, wonderful book that we have, a book that comes from the Jewish people. Now, if something came to you from a certain people, especially writings that had to do with a whole lot of the way they live and the way they think and the way that they talk and the way that they relate to each other and the way they relate to God, you would, if this book came to you from them, you would want to have some kind of information about who these people are, about the way they think, about the way that they worship God. All of these things comes into play. This is the main reason, and I need to state this over and over because so many times Christians misunderstand me and they think I'm trying to tell you that you can't understand the Bible unless you understand Judaism. I don't tell you that, or that you can't understand the New Testament unless you understand Judaism. I don't tell you that. You can have a great understanding and know God and know all the deep things of God. I'm not trying to tell you can't. But if this message comes from a certain people, all I tell you, it will help your understanding. It will increase your understanding. It will give you a new level to go to in your studies. And that's all that we're about here. Not trying to convert anyone to Judaism, not trying to mess up the things that you believe or anything like that. Just to give you another side, another level of understanding, another level of seeking what is in this marvelous, marvelous book that comes from God. Okay? So we've been in Luke for a while. We'll stay in Luke. It took us about 5 weeks to get to chapter 2, and that's where we're at. But I'm going to use my prerogative, my option here, and we're going to skip some. And the reason we are is because we can get bogged down into all kinds of things that people can't make up their minds about anyway, and that we don't always have a whole lot of evidence for. So we're going to skip some. I'm not going to deal a whole lot with the birth of Yeshua, except to point out one thing, and that is, of course, as the story is told to us in chapter 2, God works the circumstances out where Joseph and Mary and Miriam, Joseph and Miriam, have to go to Beit Lechem. Beit Lechem. Let's write this. Let's put these up because these are terms that we need to know. We read that in English as Bethlehem. Literally, it is Beit, the house of, Lechem, bread. We know this as not really the city of David in the sense of Jerusalem, but the city of David in that this is his birthplace. This is where David comes from. And by the way, King David is the main probably prototype that we have in the Bible for the Mashiach, for the Messiah, for the Anointed One. In fact, King David to this day is still referred to in our prayers and in our reading of the Bible as a Mashiach. He is referred to as a Messiah. We need to remember that in Judaism and in the Israeli culture, there are many things that are Messiah. What that simply means is all of these things taken together give us a good picture of the Messiah. One of those things that's Messiah in Judaism is the king. So David is a Messiah. He is anointed by God, and that's what the word Messiah means. Excuse me. Another thing is the high priest. The high priest is a Mashiach, is a Messiah. He is anointed by the holy anointing oil and anointed by God to fulfill his office and to fulfill his function. Another thing that is the Messiah is the tabernacle and the temple. Both of these structures are Mashiach. They are anointed by the holy anointing oil. So all of these things are Messiah. But Beit Lechem, excuse me, Beit Lechem, the house of bread, goes all the way back, you will remember, to two very interesting figures in Jewish history. That is Boaz and Ruth, or Boaz and Ruth, okay? They are the ancestors of David, the grandparents of David, or maybe the great-grandparents, I think. And this is the connection, but it even goes farther than this. You see, I'm often asked the question when I take people to Israel, exactly where do I think Yeshua was born? Do I think it was in the cave that over which is a big church now, the Church of the Nativity? I don't know. What I try to do with people who go with me to Israel is I try to take them, not necessarily that I think I've found the exact spot. I don't think anybody knows the exact spot. And I'm not sure that the one that the church is over is it. But to try to take someone where they get more of the atmosphere, where they get more of the picture of actually what would have been going on there. If we follow the story in Luke, and they go to Beit Lechem, they have to go there. Why? Because all the descendants of David have to return to their hometown, and Beit Lechem is the hometown of David, which it even pains me to even speak of these things, to talk about them. One of the places that was given up, in the Oslo peace accords between Israel and the Palestinians, and what kind of peace is this? There is no peace in it. Of course, everybody knew that from the beginning. But one of the places that was given up is this very hometown of David, the city of Beit Lechem. It's a very, very, I don't know how to explain it to you. I don't know how to express to you what I feel when I think about all of those things and that have went on. But God is still in control, and He is going to change the situation, I'm sure. And by the time this program airs, He may already have done so. We'll see what happens. Anyway, they had to return to this city of David in the sense of his hometown, the place where Boaz and Ruth were at. But Boaz and Ruth are not the start of the connection of the Messiah to the city of David. There is, or not to the city of David, but to Beit Lechem, to Bethlehem. If we go back in the Bible, we can find, I think, like when I take tourists, we go, of course, if Beit Lechem is open, we go to the church, but then I take them to a place called the Shepherd's Fields, because in the Shepherd's Fields, I can more accurately show them what it would have been like, exactly what it would have been like in the time of Jesus. Now, here's the connection I'm trying to make. Do we have any idea, do we have any hints, do we have any clues about exactly where Yeshua might have been born? Well, I believe that we do, because it is found in prophecy in the Hebrew Scriptures. Let's go first, and let me get a Hebrew Bible. It helps if you're going to read Hebrew to have a Hebrew Bible. So let me get this, and this is back in the Torah, in Genesis, Bereshit, chapter 35, okay? And in chapter 35, let me do the balancing act here very quickly. In chapter 35 is recorded a terrible, terrible event in Jewish history, and that is the death of Rachel. The death of Rachel occurs very close to the city or to the village of Beit Lechem. Something else we need to remember, we'll get to that in a minute. Let's continue on, or I'll get sidetracked. We'll read it. Let's read it, some of it in English, okay? Let's see, verse 16 of Bereshit, or Genesis chapter 35. It says, they journeyed from Beit El, and there was still a stretch of land to go to Ephrat. Now, Ephrat, you remember, we're going to go to Micah, the prophet Micah in a minute, or Micha, and we're going to see that he talks about Beit Lechem Ephratah. In other words, the Bethlehem that is in the territory of Ephrat, that is towards Ephrat. And we see here that Jacob is traveling and is in the area of exactly the same place. The other thing we need to point out here, remember that Beit Lechem is right next to Jerusalem. They're right next to each other. It's almost like Beit Lechem or Bethlehem is a suburb of Jerusalem almost. They are separated only by a short distance, very short. Okay. And it says they had still a stretch of land to go to Ephrat when Rachel went into labor and had difficulty in her childbirth. And it was when she had difficulty in her labor that the midwife said to her, don't be afraid, for this one too is a son for you. In other words, a second son. And it came to pass as her soul was departing, for she died. Terrible, terrible tragedy. Why is it such a tragedy? Well, number one, because she'd only had two sons. Number two, because her life was cut off very young, very short, especially in those days. Number three was because she was the wife that Yaakov loved the most. He truly, truly loved Rachel. And so we have to remember that this is a devastating, terrible devastation to Yaakov, to Jacob. Really bad. And then what happens later on? Then he loses also Joseph, who is his favorite son. Because why? Because he is the firstborn of Rachel. Okay. Anyway, she called his name, as she's dying, she called his name Ben-Oni. Now, Ben-Oni literally means the son of my mourning, the son of my sorrow, the son of my mourning. But his father called him. Jacob changes his name from Ben-Oni to Benjamin. Now, Ben-Oni, and let's write these. Ben-Oni. Ben-Oni is what Rachel calls him, which means the son of my mourning or grief or sorrow, okay? But Yaakov comes and he says, no, he is Ben-Yamin, which means the son, actually, of my right hand. The son of my right hand. I know you know this already, but we're going to put it there anyway, just so it can sink in. There's a name change that goes on. Did you know we can see in this name change? It's very interesting. At least it is to me. If we go to the idea of two Messiahs, see, that's the way many sages of Israel understand it, because they look at all the prophecies about the Mashiach and they say, wow, here in this instance, he is a suffering servant. He is a suffering son-servant, and he suffers and he dies. But here in this instance, he is a reigning king. He's glorious, and he puts everything straight, and he fixes everything and restores the creation of the world back to what God originally intended. How can he be both? How can the Mashiach do both things? So an idea developed within Judaism that there are two Mashiach. In other words, there are two Messiahs. One is Messiah, the son of Joseph. Very interesting. It's very, very interesting that the person that Yeshua calls dad and all of his life until he dies, I'm not talking about his heavenly father, I'm not talking about God, but his name is Joseph. Very interesting. And the other one is the Messiah, the son of David, who will rule and reign. Now, in the New Testament, the concept is actually the same, except that we don't see two people, we see two separate comings. And the first coming has to do, now listen, and it took the Jewish disciples, the Jewish Talmidim, the students of Jesus, who were all Jews, it took them a long time to get a hold of this. So we shouldn't criticize them too much, or we shouldn't criticize anyone, actually, I don't think, who doesn't necessarily get a hold of this immediately, especially if they're Jewish, because Jews don't catch this. They prefer to go with what the sages have taught about two different messiahs. But the Jewish disciples, the Jewish Talmidim of Jesus finally caught, and for an example, just read the letters of Peter, his head disciple, the head one, the leader of the pack. He finally catches it about the suffering of the Messiah at his first coming and the glory that will follow at his second coming. Well, to me, we see a parallel to this in the renaming of Rachel's second son. She names him Ben-Oni because she is dying in having him. And he is the son of her grief. He is the son of her mourning. He is the son of her suffering. He is it's a suffering name, in other words, a name of suffering that she gives. But then Yaakov, the father, comes, and he completely changes the picture. He changes the son of my grief, the son of my mourning, the son of my suffering and sorrow, into the son of my right hand. And if we take that picture and apply it to what we learn in the New Testament, or even what we learn from the sages of Israel about the two different Messiahs, we can see very clearly a parallel there. Okay, I actually didn't even mean to talk about that. Let's go somewhere else. Let's go back to Genesis chapter 35, Bereshit 35, and it says, "Thus Rachel died," and this is in verse 19. Now I'm reading from a Hebrew Bible, so the verses may be different than in an English Bible, but look around there somewhere close to 19 and you'll find it if it's not the same. "Thus Rachel died and was buried on the road to Ephrat." Then it tells us what Ephrat really is, which is Beit Lechem. So we know where they're at. They're right outside of Beit Lechem. She was buried on the road to Ephrat, which is Beit Lechem. Now that doesn't mean that by the time of Yeshua that Beit Lechem hadn't grown out to take that area in. I'm sure it has today. Beit Lechem starts actually Rachel's tomb. The tomb of Rachel is right on the edge of the city of Bethlehem, right on the very edge of it. And so the city has grown tremendously since then, all the way out. But originally it's right outside the city. But it's still in what is called Beit Lechem Ephratah, or Ephrat, still inside of it. And it says, "And Jacob set up a monument over her grave. It is the monument of Rachel's grave unto this day," until today. Now that's until the day of the writing of this, that there was still a monument there. Well, there is still a monument there also to this very day. Rachel's tomb is very well preserved. We can say, there's a saying in Israel, at least among those of us who are in the tour industry and in the tour end of that endeavor, and that is whether or not this place we're standing is the inch. That's what we say, the inch. Is this the inch? Or we think it's the inch, or we think it's not the inch, or it doesn't matter if it's the inch. What are they talking about, the inch? They're talking about the exact spot. Do we think we're in the exact spot? 9 times out of 10, we can safely say this is not the inch. We're fairly sure. We're pretty sure, or we're very sure we're not in the exact spot. But there are other times, like in Rachel's tomb, for instance, that we can pretty well say with some assuredness, yes, this is the inch. Jacob's tomb is another one that is in the city of Shechem. Okay. Now, what I want us to see, though, is the very next verse, verse 21. It says, "Israel journeyed on, and he pitched his tent beyond Migdal Eder." Migdal Eder. Another term. Migdal, and this is an important thing. Migdal Eder. Now, what is this? A Migdal is a tower. An Eder is of a flock of sheep or goats or whatever. But the Migdal Eder, the tower of the flock, is the way we would say that. He pitched his tent beyond there. So what we know is that Rachel's tomb is in the vicinity, or it's actually in the territory of Beit Lechem Ephratah, and that Israel journeys on. He moves a distance away from there, not a far distance, a short distance, a distance away from there, and because he's still in that territory, and he pitches his tent beyond the Migdal Eder, the tower of the flock. Very super interesting, at least to me it is. Now, can we pick up the line, this Migdal Eder, what is it? What is it anyway? Well, it is exactly actually what it says it is. It is a tower that is built by shepherds, and you'll see them today. In fact, there's an old place, well, it's not an old place now because they moved it. They've moved it to a new place. But there was an old place in the city limits of Jerusalem called the Biblical Research Gardens. And one of the things that they did there was they rebuilt what it would be like to be an ancient shepherd. They rebuilt a sheepfold that's made of brush or that's made of rocks. The one I saw that they had built was made of brush to make a sheepfold, thorn bushes actually. But close to this sheepfold was a stone tower that was built up where a shepherd could stand in it and could see far away. Especially in the shepherd fields of Bethlehem, you can see how this would be needed because there are oftentimes terraces and the country is not flat like here in Texas or here in West Texas. So you need to be up where you can see down in valleys and over the next hill and things like that so that you can keep track of things. The other purpose of the Tower of the Flock was actually like a checkpoint on the road. In other words, people who went on the road, the Tower of the Flock could be used by soldiers if need be to make a checkpoint. And we see this even in Israel today. Going in and out of Bethlehem, we see this. To make a checkpoint on the road, to check, make sure you're legal, make sure the people want you to come into their part of the territory, on and on. That's another purpose of it. But the main purpose of the Tower of the Flock, which is a big stone tower built that shepherds could stay in, and also under it, now I know this is going to mess people up, but so I'm not saying that this has to be the case. In other words, that Yeshua is born inside the Tower of the Flock, because all out around the Tower of the Flock are also enclosures and little sukkahs, tabernacles that are built in order to shelter shepherds and sheep who are either sick or if the sheep are giving birth, they would be brought to this place and penned up, where the shepherds could assist in this and take control of all of it. Okay, so is there another place, though, that we find the Tower of the Flock? What I was going to say was in the Tower of the Flock itself is actually a place in the base of it where very sick sheep or sheep that needed special attention would be brought and kept out of the weather, out of the elements. But let's look and find another place that the Tower of the Flock is mentioned in the Hebrew Scriptures, and it is in the prophet Micah. And that, by the way, is the same place where it talks about where Jews have always believed that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. We get that information in Micah chapter 5 and in verse 2, where it says, "But thou, Bethlehem Ephratah," and it identifies it for us very clearly, "though you be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of you shall he come forth unto me that is to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth have been from of old, from everlasting." Okay, so this is the passage that was, by the way, in the New Testament. This passage is gone to by the sages of Israel, who Herod asked a question, where is the Messiah to be born? And they go straight to here. They could have given him more information, though, because if we back up in chapter 4, we find something very interesting. It's the second place in the Hebrew Scriptures that this Migdal Eder is mentioned. And in chapter 4 and in verse 8, here it comes out at us. And it says, "And thou," now your translation is going to say, "O Tower of the Flock," but that is simply a translation of Migdal Eder. This same Migdal Eder. "The stronghold of the daughter of Zion, unto you," listen to what it says, "unto you shall it come." What, I wonder? Unto you shall it come. He goes on and tells us what? Even the first dominion, or the first kingdom. Even the first. Now remember, we have to go back to the connection between Ben-Oni, the son of my grief, and Benjamin, the son of my right hand. Who is first? Ben-Oni, the son of my grief, the son of my mourning, the son of a disaster here that's going to happen, the suffering servant, the Mashiach ben Yosef. The Messiah, the son of Joseph, he's first. But what's second then? That means second is Benjamin, the son of the right hand. That means the Mashiach ben David, the Messiah, the son of David, the glorious ruling, no sorrow here, no grieving here, only rejoicing, only wonderful, wonderful things. I mean, really something. Listen, it says the first dominion, the first kingdom, the kingdom shall come to the daughter of Jerusalem, of Yerushalayim. I don't know about you, but what we've looked at in these past few minutes is pretty amazing to me that we can find such parallels. Ben-Oni, Benjamin, Messiah, son of Joseph, Messiah, son of David. Bethlehem, Bethlehem Ephratah, Migdal Eder, the tower of the flock. So where is Yeshua born? Personally, I believe he's born, if not in the tower of the flock, somewhere very close to it. And where was the tower of the flock? Somewhere very close to the grave of Rachel. We can know that. Somewhere very close to Kever Rachel, the tomb of Rachel. Just a little interesting side bit. Well, we didn't get very far. I'm very sorry. And we still have some things we need to talk about the shepherds, about the sheep. And we'll do that quickly, though, and then because there's some very interesting things I want to get on to in the book of Luke. Just to bring out some of the Hebrewness of it, some of the Jewishness of it, and that wonderful, wonderful time in the first century when the temple was standing. But we've got another wonderful time coming, such a wonderful time when the next temple is standing. When the Messiah comes, I can't begin to get across to you, at least in Jewish eyes and in Jewish understanding, what a time that will be. I hope you catch some of it from me sometimes, that you catch my Nefesh Yehudi, my Jewish spirit, across the television. Catch it, please. It'll be an exciting time. Until the next time, Shalom Uvrakah. Peace and a blessing.
Thank you for joining us in our study. If you enjoyed this study and are interested in learning more from the Torah and the sages of Israel, then check us out on the internet at www.bfm101.com, or you may contact us toll-free at 1-800-639-0169. Our mailing address is Biblical Faith, P.O. Box 2, Abilene, Texas 79604. Until next time, we wish you Shalom Uvrakah, peace and a blessing.